Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. You know how this works. We take a stack of sources and see what we can dig out.
That's right.
And this time we're going back in time to 1984. Now, before you think we're going to talk about the book by George Orwell, we're not.
No, no.
We're talking about the year the Macintosh computer was born.
Yeah, 1984, a big year in tech. You're listening to this, you probably know how tech works. Fast-paced, constantly evolving. But back then, personal computers were a different story. Clunky, complex. Basically, it was like beige boxes with these cryptic commands that only the tech wizards could use.
Right. Not exactly user-friendly.
No, not at all.
So how did the Macintosh change all that? Was it just a better computer, or was it something bigger?
It was definitely a step forward technologically, but Steve Jobs, Apple's co-founder, he saw it as a lot more than that. He called the Macintosh the third milestone product in the computer industry, after the Apple II in 77, and the IBM PC in 81. He really thought it was the next big thing, like a total shift in how people would use computers.
So it wasn't just about specs. It was about changing how we thought about personal computing.
Yeah, exactly. And this wasn't just Jobs' vision. The idea for the Macintosh actually came from Jeff Raskin. He imagined this computer that was easy to use and had what was called bitmapped graphics. So think icons in Windows instead of just lines of code.
Okay, hold on a sec. For those of us who aren't computer science people,
Yeah.
what exactly are bitmapped graphics?
Well, it's a way of showing images on a screen using these tiny dots called pixels, and each pixel gets a specific color, and then all together they make up the image. This let them make graphics that were way more detailed and, visually appealing compared to the text-based displays that were common back then.
Gotcha. So basically it was like going from a world of just black and white text
Yeah.
to a world with like a graphical interface.
Yeah, exactly. Raskin was a visionary and ambitious, too. He wanted this revolutionary computer ready by Christmas 1981, and he wanted to sell it for just $500.
Wow. A computer for everyone at that price. That's incredible. Did they actually pull it off?
Well, not exactly. The final Macintosh actually came out in January of '84, and the price was a bit more than $500, more like $2,495.
Ouch. I guess revolution doesn't come cheap. But why the delay and the price jump?
That's a good question. Raskin's vision was really ahead of its time, and they had some technology hurdles to overcome. Plus, the Macintosh team was small, but they were super passionate about this project. They wanted to get it right, even if it meant taking more time and money.
Okay, so they had the vision, the passion, and eventually the tech. But how did they get people excited about this new computer?
Well, they did something pretty unforgettable. They had a commercial during Super Bowl X, and not just any commercial, the iconic 1984 commercial directed by Ridley Scott.
Oh yeah, the one with the woman throwing the hammer at Big Brother.
That's the one. It was a masterpiece of marketing. It made Apple look like this rebel company fighting against conformity and control, which is what they thought IBM represented. And IBM was the biggest name in computers at the time. It was a really bold move. And it instantly got everyone talking about the Macintosh.
What a statement. So besides that incredible commercial, what made the Macintosh so different from the other computers out there?
Well, there were a few key differences, but one of the biggest was its design. The Macintosh was this sleek, all-in-one unit. And get this, it had no peripheral slots.
Wait, no slots. What does that even mean? And why was that such a big deal?
Back then, peripheral slots were everywhere on computers. They were openings where you could plug in external devices like printers or modems. The Macintosh team got rid of them, which was a pretty radical move.
Why would they do that? It seems kind of counterintuitive.
It was all about keeping things simple and user-friendly. They figured that most people didn't need to mess around with the insides of the computer. They wanted to make it super easy, just turn it on and go.
Interesting. So they were hiding the complexity.
Yeah.
To make it seem more like an appliance than a machine.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see that in their marketing campaign, too. Remember the slogan? The computer for the rest of us. They were trying to reach people who were intimidated by the old computers and make the Macintosh seem like a friendly alternative.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how did people react to this brand new machine? Were they lining up to buy it?
Yeah. The initial sales were really good. They sold 70,000 units by May of '84. People were intrigued by the design, the graphical interface, and the whole idea of a computer that was actually easy to use.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? There must have been some downsides to this first Macintosh.
You're right, there were some limitations. Some critics said that the Macintosh didn't have enough RAM. That's the computer's short-term memory. And that limited how many programs you could run at the same time, and it affected the overall performance.
Ah, the classic trade-off.
Yeah.
Groundbreaking features, but with some initial problems.
Hmm.
So how did Apple respond to that criticism? Did they just ignore it?
No, they did the right thing. They listened to the feedback. In September of '84, they released the Macintosh 512K, which, as the name suggests, had way more RAM. They even renamed the original model the Macintosh 128K to differentiate the two.
Smart move. Shows they were willing to improve, which is super important in tech, even back then. So did that upgrade fix all the problems and make the Macintosh a huge success?
Well, the 512K upgrade definitely took care of a major concern, and it did boost sales. But the Macintosh's story is more complicated than that. It wasn't like an instant blockbuster hit, it was a journey, a bunch of innovations and refinements that ultimately changed personal computing forever.
I want to hear more about that journey. What else was Apple working on besides this new and improved Macintosh? Did they have any other products coming out?
Oh, yeah, they did. The Macintosh wasn't like a standalone thing. It was all part of a bigger plan. They actually launched a bunch of new products that year, and they were all built around a powerful new type of computer architecture, 32-bit.
Okay, back up a second. 32-bit what now?
Think of it this way. It was a major upgrade in how computers processed information. It allowed for more complex calculations, and they could handle a lot more memory.
So like going from a two-lane road to a superhighway?
Exactly. Perfect analogy. This 32-bit architecture was the future, and Apple was leading the way. Along with the Macintosh, they also came out with 3 new models of their Lisa computer.
The Lisa. Wasn't that
Yeah.
not exactly Apple's biggest hit?
You're right. The Lisa had a bit of a rough start. It was innovative, but really expensive. And it didn't really find its place in the market. But these new 32-bit Lisas were different. They were aimed at a more specialized market. Workstations?
Workstations. Is that like the computers they use at NASA or something?
Not far off. Workstations were powerful machines. They were used for demanding tasks, like engineering and scientific research and graphic design. Companies like Sun Microsystems were making a name for themselves in that space, and Apple wanted to get in on the action.
So they were trying to be a player in both the consumer market with the Macintosh and the professional market with these new Lisas. Ambitious.
It was a bold move, but Apple had a secret weapon: their dominance in education.
Oh, yeah. Apple computers were in like every school back then.
Exactly. Over 70% of computers in education were Apple's. They already had tons of users who were familiar with their products. And when the Macintosh came out, all 7 Ivy League schools placed big orders for it.
Smart move. Get them young right. If students are learning on Macs, they're more likely to stick with Apple when they start working.
Exactly. It was a brilliant strategy. And it helped make Apple a major force in the computer industry.
So we've got this passionate team, a revolutionary product, a mind-blowing Super Bowl commercial, and a strategic push into both the consumer and professional markets. What else was going on behind the scenes at Apple?
Well, they were obsessed with the details. Not just the hardware and software, but the whole manufacturing process. Jobs wanted the Macintosh to be the first personal computer. That was designed from the beginning to be built in the millions. He had this vision of computers becoming as common as telephones.
Wow, that's thinking big.
It was. And to do that, they needed to ramp up production like never before.
Sure, no more tinkering in the garage.
Nope. Apple built a whole factory just for the Macintosh. It could produce over 500 units a day. They even said they could make a new Mac every 27 seconds.
That's incredible. Sounds like they were getting ready for a huge demand.
They were. And they weren't just focused on selling to individuals. Remember, they also wanted to win over businesses, the ones who were already using IBMs.
Right. How are they going to do that? Convince companies to ditch their IBM PCs and switch to Macs? That seems like a tough sell.
It wasn't about replacing, it was about integration. Jobs knew they had to make the Macintosh work with the existing systems. One key area was software compatibility.
Ah, so you could use some of your old software on a Mac.
Exactly. They also focused on supporting local area networks, which were getting popular in offices for sharing files and resources.
Makes sense. Companies weren't going to just abandon their whole network to switch to Macs.
Exactly. And they also worked on something called 300-278 data communications, which let Macs talk to those big IBM mainframe computers that a lot of companies used.
So they weren't just selling a cool new computer. They were selling a way to make that computer work with what people already had. Smart.
Absolutely. It was about making the Macintosh a real option for businesses, even the ones that were deeply invested in IBM.
That must have been a tricky balancing act, appealing to both individual users and big corporations, like walking a tightrope.
It was, but that duality, that ability to appeal to both individuals and businesses, would become a key part of Apple's success going forward.
So they had the vision, the technology, the manufacturing power, and the strategic approach. What about the human element? This whole Macintosh project must have been huge. Who were the people behind it all?
You're right. The human side of the story is super important, especially in tech. And the Macintosh team was really special. It was a small group of less than 100 people, and a lot of them considered themselves artists more than engineers.
Artists. That's an interesting way to describe a tech team.
It's true. They had this unique approach, this passion for design and user experience. That went beyond just making things work. Jobs created a culture of intense creativity and collaboration, that even secrecy. They worked crazy hours, fueled by late-night pizza. And they all believed they were creating something truly revolutionary.
It sounds like a classic Silicon Valley startup story, even though Apple was already a successful company.
It had that spirit, for sure. And that spirit was crucial. They weren't just building a computer, they were building a movement. They were challenging the way things were done, pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
Speaking of challenging the status quo, let's talk about that marketing campaign again.
Yeah.
That iconic 1984 Super Bowl ad was just the beginning, right?
Oh, yeah. They went all out. Magazine ads, billboards, even a 10-page spread in Newsweek. Their slogan, Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us, was everywhere.
Wow. Talk about a media blitz. But they weren't just shouting from the rooftops, were they? There had to be a deeper message behind all that marketing.
There was. They weren't just selling features. They were selling an idea. The idea that anyone could use a computer, no matter how tech-savvy they were. They were trying to make technology less intimidating and more accessible, which was pretty radical back then.
So it was just about the computer itself. It was about how people interacted with it, how they felt about it. They were selling an experience.
Exactly. And that focus on the user experience was in everything they did, from the design of the interface to the way they marketed the product.
But how did they actually make the Macintosh so user-friendly? Was it just clever marketing? Or were there actual things they did to achieve that?
Oh, they put a lot of work into it. The graphical user interface, with its icons, windows, and menus, was a huge change from the text-based interfaces of the time.
Yeah. No more typing in those weird commands.
Exactly. And they made the mouse, which was still a pretty new thing, a central part of the experience.
Ah, the mouse. That little device we all use without even thinking about it today.
Right. Back then, it was revolutionary. You could point, click, and drag things around the screen. It was so much more intuitive and visual.
And that's still with us today. Touchscreens, trackpads. They all owe something to that little Macintosh mouse.
Absolutely. The Macintosh helped pave the way for the intuitive interfaces we use today, on everything from smartphones to tablets to those giant touchscreens you see in museums.
So they focused on user experience. They marketed it brilliantly. But they also needed software, right? A computer is only as good as the programs you can run on it.
That's right. A computer without software is basically useless.
So how did Apple tackle that? Did they make all the software themselves?
Well, they did develop some important applications, but they also knew that to really make the Mac a success, they needed other developers to create software for it, so they worked hard to get developers on board.
So they were building like a community, not just a product.
Exactly. They held developer conferences, provided support and resources. They even started something called Macintosh University to teach developers how to use the new platform. They knew that having a lot of different software was key.
It's really interesting to see how Apple, even back then, knew how important it was to have a developer ecosystem. I mean, that's basically what the App Store is today, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it worked really well. Within a few years, there were tons of apps available for the Mac. Everything from word processors and spreadsheets to games and creative tools.
Speaking of creative tools, we
Yeah.
can't forget about McPaint, that amazing graphics program that came with every Macintosh and became super popular. What made it so special?
McPaint was a game changer. It was one of the first programs that let you create and edit digital graphics in a way that was really intuitive and easy to use. And remember, this was before Photoshop or even Microsoft Paint.
Wow. So people were basically using like digital cave paintings before that?
Well, maybe not quite that primitive, but you get the idea. McPaint really took advantage of the Mac's graphical interface. And that easy-to-use mouse control we talked about, you could draw, paint, and edit images really easily. It opened up a whole world of creative possibilities.
It must have blown people's minds back then, being able to do all that on a computer.
It was a total revelation, especially for artists and designers. But it wasn't just for professionals. Everyday people loved using McPaint too. They created everything from simple drawings to birthday cards to, well, probably some pretty bad digital art, too.
Hey, everyone starts somewhere, right?
Yeah,
The important thing is that MacPaint made creating digital art accessible to everyone.
exactly. And there was another groundbreaking app, MacWrite. It was a user-friendly word processor. It let you create and edit documents easily. You could use different fonts and sizes and styles, all within that intuitive graphical interface.
So the Macintosh wasn't just changing how people use computers. It was changing how they created things and how they communicated.
Exactly. MacPaint and MacWrite together really showed how focused the Mac was on creativity and accessibility. These tools let people be more productive and expressive in ways that just weren't possible with the old computers.
And that focus on user-friendly creative tools, that's something that's still with us today. Think about all the amazing things people are doing with smartphones and tablets now, creating art writing, music editing, videos. It's incredible.
It really is, and the Macintosh played a big part in making all that possible. But its impact wasn't limited to the digital world. It also had a huge influence on print,
Really? How so?
well before the Mac. If you wanted to make something that looked really good in print, you needed these special typesetting machines. They were super expensive. The whole process was complicated and costly. But the Macintosh changed all that because it could make such high-resolution graphics.
So how did they bring professional quality printing to the average person?
They introduced this revolutionary new printer in 1985 called the LaserWriter. It was one of the first affordable laser printers that was designed specifically for personal computers.
So I'm guessing this LaserWriter wasn't your typical dot matrix printer.
Oh, definitely not. It used this special language called Adobe PostScript, which let you control the font's graphics and layout really precisely. It was a game changer for anyone who wanted to make professional-looking stuff, like documents, newsletters, brochures, even entire books. And they could do it all from their desk.
Wow. So the Mac and the LaserWriter together basically invented desktop publishing.
Yes, right. It gave individuals and small businesses the power to create high-quality printed materials. They didn't have to rely on those expensive printing companies anymore. It was a huge deal.
It sounds like the Macintosh was a real catalyst for change, both in digital and print media. It gave people a voice and a platform they didn't have before.
You got it. It empowered people to create and share their ideas in ways that were never possible before. And that spirit of democratization, breaking down barriers, making technology accessible to everyone, that's the real legacy of the Macintosh.
What an amazing story.
Yeah.
It's incredible how those ideas, from all the way back in 1984,
Yeah.
still shape the world today.
It really is. The Macintosh might be a thing of the past now. But its spirit of innovation and human-centered design is still alive in every device we use, every app we make, and every idea we share online.
That's a legacy worth remembering. And for our listeners out there, I have a question for you. What revolutionary tech that we use today do you think will have that kind of lasting impact? What seems normal now? That will change the world in ways we can't even imagine yet.
That's a great question. It reminds us that we're all part of this ongoing evolution of technology.
Exactly. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. Until next time.